I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
And this
is Bromance.
Nailed it. All right, today we have a very, very special guest on the Bromance podcast. Born in Fort St. James, British Columbia, Jim was a first-round draft pick by the Edmonton Oilers in the 1983 draft. Playing career span from the Edmonton Oilers to the Chicago Blackhawks. Spent time with the Indianapolis Ice, where he won a Turner Cup, the Nova Scotia Oilers in the American Hockey League, and moved into coaching. Jim Playfair is also my father. Dad, very, very happy to have you on the podcast here. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
I love this. I'm just like the long lost adopted child here. So I can't wait for the banter between you two. But Dylan, kick things off.
Yeah. So Dad, you obviously had a very long playing career, and one of the cool accolades that you've got is a ring in almost every league that you played in, and a couple of Stanley Cup cracks at it. Can you talk about the teams and what a through line was, having won a Memorial Cup, a Calder Cup, a Turner Cup, making it all the way to the end in the NHL playoffs. Is there a common theme amongst the teams that you find that has the success factor?
Yeah, I think the common thing that I would look back on is probably trusting each other. I think the ability to understand at the start of the season, everybody believes they can win. And I think as the season goes on, that you have some success, you have some failures, just the ability to kind of believe in the direction that everybody's trying to get to. And I think you got to challenge each other in practices. You got to challenge each other in, on the ice. You have to stick up for each other. You have to look after each other. But I think ultimately the friendship that is formed over the course of a season is probably the fundamental key to giving a team a chance to win at the end. I think that it takes takes luck. It takes, you have to stay out of the injury issues. You got to stay out of the suspension issues. But I think that probably the common thread that I would look back on in the championship seasons were good people that were able to withstand the heavy pressure and the push that comes during the season. I think when things are going well, it's easy. When things are getting hard, you got to dig in. And I think when the group digs in, more often than not, you give yourself a better chance. And I think looking back on the success that I've had in the game with winning, we've had better teams that didn't win. And I think the common denominator was people sacrificing something for the good of the team. Maybe someone's a first line player and they got to go down and play in the fourth line for a while. Maybe that somebody has to fill in for injuries or deal with coaches on issues that are uncomfortable. And I think as you manage through that, you give yourself, at least you up the odds to give yourself a chance to win.
Yeah, I think that it really does come back to like the culture, the camaraderie, even the belief thing. It always hits home. In Humboldt, our coach Darcy Hogan got us a yellow sign that said "Believe," and we all did our autograph on that sign. And that was something that we all patted on the way out to the rink or on the way out to the ice. And I think that was something that you get that, and it's just you can feel it. And if you can instill that, it's a pretty special thing. And I want to obviously transition into your coaching, but I want to chuck it back to Fort St. James. I mean, I love, we talked before, I'm from Hinton, grew up in Leduc, and obviously that small town, the community aspect of things, Fort St. James, it's got to be, I've never been, I've only been up to Smithers, but it's got to be beautiful. Talk about that, foundation and the upbringing, leading you into helping build those cultures and that camaraderie.
Well, I come from a long line of big families. I think my mom was raised into one of the 7 kids, and there were 7 children in our family. We had 3 or 4 cousins in the community that had 5 or 6, 7 kids.
Jeez.
So it was an era and a time when we all kind of worked and relied together with each other. And I think that's what was important for us. There was always something to do. There's always something activity outside to go play. There was always a different sport to play. Some of us were good in one sport and humbled in another sport. And I think we were able to all play those sports. Even if it was snowball fighting, everybody had a little game, something to do, and everybody had a piece of maybe having some success, And I think that was an important part of it. I think being challenged and pushed by internally by our family, I think that was a good thing. My brothers are in the logging industry in some format, and I used to work in the sawmills in the summertime, and I remember thinking, man, I don't know if I could do this my whole life. This is hard. This is a grind. I want to try and do something different. So I have a brother, Larry, who was 6 years older, and he left Fort St. James to go and play hockey. And I thought if he could do it, maybe I could give it a crack. And he went through the Portland Winterhawks program, and I ended up going through the same program. And I think the belief, it's like when you see someone that can do it, then maybe I can do it, and that may also tie into how you win. Someone someone makes a sacrifice, someone commits to doing something, and if they can do it, I can do it, and it becomes a belief where the details matter. That's what I was able to probably learn from Fort St. James, watching my brother leave to watch his journey, and maybe like, what, maybe I should run a little more, maybe I should work out a little more, maybe I should dedicate myself a little more, because I had a great role model who did that to give himself a chance. I probably had more skill than Larry, but I had to learn to put the dedication that he put in, and he pulled me higher than I would have been on my own for sure.
Yeah, it's got to help, obviously, having someone that's sort of forged that path before you. Talk about Larry's role in sort of opening some of those doors for you, as you know you mentioned the Portland Winterhawks program, and then from there must have been some element of having someone on the inside, not just as far as blaze the trail, but a little bit of look out for this and navigate this part of the business, because it is a business, right?
For sure. And I think Larry, the Winterhawks had a summer hockey camp up in Kitimat, BC. So I went up there a couple of years with Larry, and he was an instructor, and I was obviously in the camp, and Portland identified me at that time to come and play. So that was a huge inroads for me through Larry's dedication to the Blackhawks and working in the summertime. And then as I went through it, we talked to different agents and different scenarios and getting drafted, and then what comes with that. Larry had a role in Buffalo where he was an enforcer. He was looking after the high end skilled players, and that was an era of the game where there was a lot more fighting as part of the 60-minute game. It was just an element of the game that was still very active, and to understand what that role looked like. It's funny, Larry never ever ever would talk about his fights or his successes or failures in his fights. He retired, and I retired pretty much in the same time. And we took our families down to Florida. We didn't have any kids, but Larry and Jane had one or two, I think, at the time. And one night we sat on the deck, and then everybody gone to bed, and we sat there, we're drinking Caesars. And I'm like, all right, let's hear him. And he went through a bunch of fights, and I was like, oh my, that could have been a podcast. Listen to him talk about the nervous energy going in, and how he was upset, his upset stomach and anxiety going into a game that he had to fight with. And then listen to the backside of how his career went. Was really interesting and really refreshing. It was fun to have that conversation with him, because we were both kind of out of it. We weren't going to change our careers. They were what they were, and we were, moving on. So, but he was definitely a huge influence in my ability to probably trust myself to go push and challenge, give myself a chance.
Yeah, and I think he especially like doing something like that. Like I know you obviously played a little of the tough guy role as well, and like I mean I got into one fight in my junior career, and I ended up with a black eye, and I never did it again. So it's you do need that, like, I don't know, stability, I guess, and I just like that, even just that role model in that role as well. And like, you move into your career, and then you're getting out of it, and you're retiring, and like, as you look back, and especially in your time in Portland and stuff, like, were you always going home? Were you always like connecting with, I mean, you mentioned a big family, but like, how important, I guess, was that? I think we always like to talk about support systems. And I mean, we talk very much about Larry, and I know he was huge for you, but like, how important was it to have that support system going home, and like having your friends, having your family always in Fort St. James while you're trying to like try and pave this new way, and
Yeah.
figure it out in Florida and different parts of the world. And yeah.
Well, I left at 15, and so to go back in the summer times was really a special time, because your friends are really, they're not changing. They're the same good group of people you grew up with. And so we did go back, and I went back and spent my summers there. I worked in the sawmills, and then I eventually, when we got married, we bought a home back there, and it eventually turned into a cabin on the lake, and now we built that up, and so that really is our home right now. Roxanne and I both felt that with the traveling around we were doing, hired and fired and moving around, and these kids, they needed a base somewhere. They needed a stabilizing position where they could hang their hat, and he's like, that hat will be there next summer, and it was kind of like an opportunity for us to really give the kids a base, actually. And so that's what we did. We bought a cabin, we fixed it up a little bit, and now it's kind of our main home right now. And so it become a really important part of my life. And I think that the downfall was we didn't have ice in the summertime, so I'd drive 100 miles to Prince George to skate and work out and go back and forth. And but that was, that kind of comes full circle now. Here I am coaching with the Cougars because it's kind of a cool full circle, story. But that was probably the downside, or the offset of going back to some place where I felt really comfortable, was finding a way to continue my conditioning in the summertime. So that was, yeah, it's still a special place, and it always will be.
That's awesome. And not to jump too far ahead, but you sort of led into it there with being in Prince George. Um, so you spent, 10 years in the Calgary system, coached in the East Coast League, American League. Talk about going back to Prince George and how that experience has been, in a full circle way to have worked with the best players in the world, with the Leon Draisaitl's and the Joe McGinleys and the Darnell Nurses, and the list goes on and on. And now the opportunity to come back home and not just give back in a sense to the community, but to be working with kids who are kind of in that place that you just mentioned in their career, starting out.
Yeah, I think when we got fired in February out of Edmonton, and we went back to Arizona, we kind of like reevaluated where we were, what we wanted to do, and we ended up selling that house. We came back to Fort St. James and bought a skidoo and thought we were gonna just retire and go skidooing on the lake and go ice fishing and kind of like sleep sleep in until 10 o'clock in the morning and try and do as little as possible. And Mark Lamb, who's a general manager and head coach here in Prince George, him and I had worked together in the Arizona organization. So he reached out to me and said, "Why don't you just come down for the weekend games and just have a look and watch and spend the night and come around the team?" And they had two young assistant coaches at the time. So I came down and I took them out for lunch one day. I said, "Look, if you guys aren't comfortable with me being around here, I don't want to come around. But if you think it'd be okay where I could pass some knowledge, I don't want your jobs. If I'm going to do this, I want to make sure you guys are on board with this." And they were, so it worked out good. So the first year we did that, and then the next year one of the coaches left, and Mark reached out and said, "Do you want to come in?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I like, would my message be good for the kids? Would I be able to, figure out that component of, I've never coached minor hockey. I've never coached young players. And he's like, "No, no." He says, "We're gonna have a good team." He says, "This will be good for you." So I came down, and then I said, "I'll do it for 1 year." And he said, "No, the owners want to do a 2-year contract." I'm like, "Oh God, I don't know if I can do 2 years."
I just want a snowmobile.
Yeah, exactly. I just bought a skidoo, don't you know?
Yeah.
So, we did the 2-year deal, and it's been awesome. It's so cool because now the 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, I know where they want to get to. I can show them behind the curtain a little bit. And one of the things I've committed to doing is the high-end skilled kids, they got to kill penalties. Like, I make them all
Yep.
kill penalties because I'm like, you're not going to go to the NHL. They're paying someone $8 million a year to do that job already. They're covered off on the power play. You got to go in there and try and be a defender. You got to learn how to play without the puck. You got to play defense. You got to kill penalties. And it's funny because Tarek Parasak now says, if I didn't kill penalties, I don't think I would have been drafted in the first round by the Washington Capitals. So that's a buy-in by the players to commit to listening to what I'm saying. But I think that's one of the cool parts of it, is helping them understand. And one of the things I like to do with them is, you're not going to do that in the NHL. You can't do that in the NHL. So don't do it here. Like, don't do it here. Then all of a sudden flick a switch and go, "Okay, now I'm in an NHL training camp." They learn to appreciate the fact that when I'm talking about the NHL, I'm not bragging and telling them I've had that career. I'm like, "No, this is where you want to go. Here's a cheat sheet. Here's what you can do to help yourself close that gap to get there." That's been really rewarding. Mark Lamb and the scouting staff, when the kids are 14, 15, they come to training camp. I, d- I can't, I don't know if they're good or bad. I can't tell you that.
Yeah.
But when they're 17, 18, 19, I can say, yeah, I can see where this guy would fit on an NHL team. And that for me has been my contribution to the group, is helping them when I think they're going to go to the top. And I always say I coach them all together, but it's been really rewarding, Dylan, to talk about, I've never coached our own kids. That's always been a little bit of a sore spot. I've never coached my own children. I've coached lots of other kids, but never my own. And it's like, well, maybe now here's time to get back to some kids and see how this plays out. So it's been fun.
And I think, I've only coached for 4 years. I've coached 11 to 15-year-old kids, and I do find there's a lot of harmony in the sense of, like, all right, I really hope these kids are learning and, like, becoming better hockey players and becoming better people. But, like, man, I get a ton out of it as well. And like I really do find it super rewarding. Obviously, I've never worked with pro athletes but my question is, why did you get into coaching? We talked a little bit before of like the retirement piece and like, okay, now I'm done hockey, that everything I've ever known for how many years of my life. And was it an instant thing for you where it's like, I got to stay in this. Like I want to be involved in hockey and like I can't I can't not do it.
I didn't want to go back to the sawmill. No.
Yeah, fair.
I I was fortunate when I was 21 years old. I was in Halifax, and Bruce Boudreau was one of the top. He was one of the leaders of the team, and we had a bunch of guys there, and they had a vote, and I was voted assistant captain at 21 years old, my second year in the American Hockey League, and I'd worn a letter my entire career, and so I always felt a connection between the dressing room and the coaching staff, and having the confidence to go in and say, "Hey, this is where the group is. This is my suggestion. What I think we should do," and that became a comfort that I had, and then I had a detached retina, set me back for a block of time, and then Mike Keenan was actually this general manager in the Chicago Blackhawks, and he came down one day and he's like, maybe you should go behind the bench and help these kids coach for a little while, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I think I want to play a couple more years. He's like, that's fine. He goes, but right now, since you're out, he says, you should try this. And I did it, and then we got fired 3 months later, so I had to go find a job. I'm like, holy shit, that coaching thing is tough because 3 months after I tried it, I got fired. But then we went to Dayton, Ohio, and I started my coaching career. I like to build. I like the building part of it. I like the camaraderie of getting guys together. I wasn't sure where I'd be with the capabilities of challenging the group and making people do things that they don't want to do consistently. That's basically what coaching is: getting players to do things they don't want to do all the time, but making them do it consistently. And how you sell that message and how you package that. It's like anything else, right? You're gonna have the ups and downs. They say you're hired to be fired, to a degree you are. But I also think that there's a shelf life for people and players when your message gets old and it changes. It's good. It's refreshing for everybody. So it's been a hell of a journey. I really enjoyed it, and now Jax is following in that path, and I think that's really cool. He's followed a life that is he's seen the ups and downs of that, and he's chosen to bring his family into that. So I think that's kind of cool. But it's been awesome, actually.
You mentioned the amount of firings and the amount of failure, and it's funny to look at your resume and to see how many successes there are, and they don't mention all of the failures, of the firings, of the losses. Can you talk a bit about processing that and what role the failure plays in the success?
The deal with coaching is you're going to lose more than you're going to win, because only one team wins at the end, right? So that's just the journey that you're on. I think the key to it is trust in the process, have a belief in what you think is really important for the team to make non-negotiable, but then be flexible to what makes the players their best. And I think that becomes the balance of it. Funny story, there's a player that played in Prince George, and his Blair Betts, and he came into Calgary's farm, Calgary, and he came down the farm. He was in St. John, New Brunswick. Went through the season. He's a real nice, third line center iceman, real nice player. Went on to have a nice career in the NHL. And we were in a playoff game. We were in overtime, and he took a face off in the D zone and went back to the defenseman, and he wires one right off the crossbar, and the puck was up off the rink. And they call a timeout, so he comes back to the bench, and he comes over, and he's kind of like, oh, get me off he's a rookie. Get me off the ice. I leaned down and said, there's no way that guy can beat you that clean twice. I said, give it another crack. He wins a draw, and we win the game. And he's like, oh, but a little bit of humor at a time when a kid was thinking, he's for sure going to pull me off the ice, pull me on the bench because I lost the draw so clean. You have to have maybe some success yourself to get the confidence to have the humor. And when I first started coaching my first couple of 3 years, I didn't have that ability. I think I had to establish myself. I believed I had to do it a specific way. I had to figure out a game plan. But as you get older and as you probably get more experience, you get better. I think you're probably a much better coach, but also the players can buy into what you're trying to sell to them. And I think that comes with maturity and some success as well.
Yeah, I would for sure, just to rope it back to not coaching us. I'd give season tickets to Flames games and hanging out in the NHL dressing room over having you coach the minor hockey program any day of the week. So let's just establish that off the bat here. Watching you go through that process as a kid, for sure, gave, just speaking for myself, gave me the confidence to pursue a career that is wrought with failure. I mean, if you have 100 auditions and you book 2 of them, you're a working actor. Uh, but you're being told no 98 times, which can be really, really challenging if you're not very cognizant of the fact that you're going to lose more than you're going to win. But when you do win, it's
Yeah.
going to be those cool moments that you get to share with a lot of, you get to share with the people who win. So, yeah, it was really cool to watch you go through that process, and it definitely gave me the tools to pursue the career that I'm doing today. So, thanks for
Good.
that.
My
I
pleasure.
love this. I love that. That was great. Okay, but I gotta ask one more thing about, like, we talked about culture, we talked about camaraderie, and I think you of all people know, especially coaching from pro adults, guys who have had it all, to now obviously younger kids, 16 to 20-year-old kids that are experiencing a whole different way of growing up in a hockey world. Like, just truly, even for myself, only 27 years old, I'm like, I couldn't imagine, playing hockey nowadays compared to what I was playing. And I guess how from you, like, what do you pull from? Like, what is your things where you continue to stay, I think there's an adaptability element of it, of like trying to obviously stay connected with these kids, but like, what do you pull from yourself? Is it is it your teams? Is it your friends? Is it your connections? Or is it just like, I need to gain some new perspective as well from these kids? Like, I guess talk about how Jim Playfair is building his team and those connections.
Yeah, first of all, I think I get a lot of my drive and energy and juice from the family, from our boys and from Roxanne. When I first started coaching the league, I'd phone these guys and be like, okay, these kids, they're doing this, and what do you think? And they were awesome resources for me to be able to pass information on and gather information. I still think it's important to get up in the morning and show up with energy. I still think that, I'm 61, when I walk in that dress room, I know they look at me and they're like, what's the old guy doing, And I still think that working out's important. Having a sense of humor is important. I still think the surrounding components of your coaching is making them feel that you respect what they're doing and it's important that you're there. But I think when the hammer drops and you're teaching video or you're running a drill or you're showing something on the ice, I think you take it to another level. And I think you get really clear, serious, and detailed and specific on exactly what needs to be done. And then that's when there's no wiggle room. And then that's when you make sure it's done right. And that's when you can tighten the screws down a little bit. But you can't run the whole day that way. I think you can't have that energy and walk around like everything is that important. I love like sitting down and communicating with the kids and laughing and telling funny stories and having that energy. And I didn't do that when I first started my coaching career. I probably didn't do that for 10 years, my coaching career. And so coming back now, I still think it's important to get up and be there on time and spend time at the rink and be there. And, you're not supposed to talk to the kids one-on-one because of, society, whatever the rules are. So I'll call them in. I'm like, hey, I'll leave the door open because, we can't be here one-on-one. They start laughing. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm like, yeah, well, these are the rules, You develop those little pieces of humor and the players look at you like, yeah, you know what? You do have a compassionate side because when you're talking about something and it's non-negotiable, they'll buy into it because there is the other side. And I think that's an important growth that you can't go in and give them half-ass direction and not go all in with your emotion and your compassion because they'll pick up on it and they won't think it's that important. So I think I've learned a balance, but I think I've gotten that balance from our kids, from our own kids.
And I think even like to that point, there's a curiosity piece that really does matter with our youth today. Of like, my favorite thing about practice and going out to coach now is just like asking, the kids I coach like the most random questions, because I do find that it like builds something. And it's like, listen, I'm here to help you. And like, yeah, maybe I'm not the best X's and O's guy, but like, I'll help you on the ice. But like, listen, like, I care about you as a human being. And I think that really does go a long way. One thing I've also really, really realized with the kids nowadays is like, reassurance goes a long way, and like validation and recognition goes a long way. And like, you know, I just even telling the kids that you're proud of them. It sounds so simple, it sounds so small, but like for some reason nowadays, like it really does go a long way. I don't know if you find that as well.
100%. And I think that's something that, going back to communication with our own boys, like the world they live in, the internet world is a demanding, challenging, unfair world sometimes. The kids will be playing a game, they'll turn a puck over and they'll score, and the internet blows up on them and it's like the fans are giving it to them, and I would never know that. I would never even think that that would be a thing that they would care about because as adults, you're like, don't turn it on, then you want to like Darnell Nurse. Does anybody get more hometown abuse than
Yeah.
Doc? And so he's like, yeah, I just don't listen to it, and so I'm thinking when I come here, I'm thinking, well, these kids just don't listen to it. Well, they do, and so you got to reinforce the positivity of that. But you could do it. There's sometimes you do it in humor too, and I think you got to do it in different ways. But in our one-on-one meetings, you sit down, you talk to a player, and you find something new about them. It's like anybody else. If someone takes an interest in you as a person, that goes a long ways. And I don't care what industry you're working in, what society you're living in. What do they say? The most important thing you say to somebody is their first name, and I think that's a little quality of people skills that's really important.
You know who taught me that? Ron McLean. He was like he told me, he's like, if you see, I mean, obviously some like certain areas, but like, and you can see it like when you're in stores or like at a grocery store, and like you refer to the cashier like by their name, and like you can see a life that like comes in them. And like Ron McLean is like the person that told me, is like, if you get the chance, like do it. And that is a man that remembers every single name, every single memory, every single story, and you can tell just because of how present he is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, you're right. No, and it's a detail. It's important. It matters. I think it does matter.
Ty, do you know what your love language is?
I'm personally a quality time kind of guy myself. You?
Well, see, personally, I'm a gift-giving kind of guy. So I got you this.
A present right from your wrist? You didn't have to. Seriously, I just told you, I'm a quality time kind of person. Hence why we host this very podcast on friendships.
You don't think I heard you?
A citizen watch? Dylan, this is too much. You didn't have to.
Aw, sure I didn't. Actually, I do. I need that back though, because you said you love quality time, and I'm a gift giver, but I do promise I will get you a quality timepiece from our friends at Charm Diamond Center. Just not this one, because this one's mine.
Not at all what I meant, but this is really nice. Thanks, DP.
Anytime. I love buying my buddies gifts from Charm Diamonds because they have something for everyone, and they're Canadian owned and operated. So next time you have someone special to shop for, go to charmdiamonds.com.
Charm Diamonds is the proud sponsor of Bromance, where we love taking the time to help combat loneliness.
I really do love these though. They have no batteries. They just run on light. Yeah, they're pretty nifty. Yeah, I'm gonna get you one. Just kidding.
I'll be ready.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I guess that's another difference between the NHL and coaching junior hockey is you're not just adjusting skill sets. You really are building the character of these young players, right? Do you find that that's a pretty locked in thing? Like you talk about guys in the dressing room being good dressing room guys, like having good character. Do you find there's room for that once you get to the NHL, or have those guys pretty much evolved as far as their presence in the room? Like it seems easy to take a 16-year-old kid and explain them something as simple as, hey, using someone's first name in conversation goes a long way, and here are little things you can do in a day-to-day to prepare yourself for a professional setting and be more capable once you get there. Have you seen that sort of evolution happen in pro as well, where someone can entirely change their game with a character thing, or is that something that you feel happens more in the junior level?
No, I think that the NHL players, it's a young league, right? I mean, we're older. When we played, you weren't a free agent until you're 31. So you were stuck with a team for 11, 12 years. And now the kids are free agents at 26. So that's a younger league in the sense that kids are coming in at 18, 19, 20, and they're getting fast tracked into the pro hockey, whether it's in the NHL or the American Hockey League. But once they get up in the NHL and they're cooking with gas, there's still a ton of external pressure. There's external pressure to play well, to stay in the lineup, to earn a contract, to keep the fans off your back, to, keep your agent happy, keep your family engaged. And so there's a lot of pressure. And I think in the NHL, those guys are like, okay, sit me down, show me what I got to do, reinforce my details, and then help me stay with it. And I think in junior hockey, you do the same thing, but you have to do it minus some of the non-negotiable time frame. Like they got 68 games here and they got 82 going to 84 in the NHL. So it's game day off. The ones that need help when they need help, just show up for them. I think the thing that I did in the NHL and I do it here now is I'll cut a player's shifts for them. And instead of walking up, let's say we lose a game, you cut the player's shifts. You go, hey, come see me after practice. I got some clips for you. And the guy's like, oh God, they just dread coming in to see
Yeah.
to meet the coach.
Oh,
What I've learned to do is I'll take 1 or 2 games and I'll blend them together and I'll make the shifts, like 4 or 5 minutes. I'll say, hey, listen, I got some cartoons cut. You want to come watch them? Come watch them. If you don't, I don't care. And it just takes the pressure off. And a lot of times they will come in, but they're coming in like, oh, okay, good, sitting down. The battlefield's even when you approach it that way. Now, when you bring the group together, it's not optional because you're going to teach the group something. But I think that's something that's important because as soon as the players walk in after a loss and the coach says, come here, I got something to show you, generally they can be very good. So if you can blend a couple of games together and you call it and you make it optional, when they walk in, they sit down and it's a partnership. Well, let's sit down and have a partnership and let's figure this out, as opposed to I watch the cartoons. I know exactly where your mistakes are. Come here, I'm going to show you all your mistakes. Like that part of the game has changed, I believe, 100%. And I think that's to tie into that would be the difference, Dylan, is try to, I think, help those guys manage the pressure up there and here teach them how to understand what the pressure is going to be, how they can manage through it, and how they can rely on their teammates to help support their journey.
ups and downs, highs and lows, peaks and valleys. There's so many within a season, but also just like looking back on your own personal life, like there's been a lot of lows, a lot of highs, and you unfortunately went through grief at a very young age, and now now being able to be in the world where I speak for kids or whatever it is, I learned that these kids know a lot, and I've unfortunately experienced a lot already, and I think learning from them is something that I never really thought I would obviously, like gain a lot, but like I learn from kids all the time. So I'm curious. My question is, what have you learned about yourself? What's something that you've learned about, Jim Playfair as now a coach of youth, and whether it's connection, community, foundation, like what is something you've learned about yourself?
Going through the journey of raising your own children, there's no playbooks. You just do what you think is best for that moment. You raise your kids and hopefully they become your friends. And I think, like I'm not Dylan's dad anymore. I'm a friend of his. I'm not going to tell him show up on time or people get your hair cut or whatever, right? Those days are gone. But when you have the communication with them and you discuss and you watch how they turned out, the journey with these kids now is trust the process and just like find a way to help to take the pressure off of them, to allow them to reach their dreams. And I think my calmness in that, my probably trusting myself, is something I learned about my capabilities of coaching. I wasn't sure I could coach in the Western Hockey League, to be honest with you. I wasn't sure if I had the skill set to deal with kids at that level. When I first got there, my first meeting with the dressing room, I told the kids, I'm like, listen, this is the Western Hockey League, and you guys are trying to get onto school or you're trying to turn pro. And I said, your mommy can't help you, your daddy can't help you, and your agent can't help you. If you got a problem, come see the coaches, And I meant that in a positive way, not in a cutting your parents off. It's just, this is our job now. Like we're paid to help you guys win here, develop here, and give yourself the best chance to move on. And I would say I've learned to be probably more patient, more understanding of what these kids are going through. Like they're going to school and they're dealing with all those issues. So just probably being more patient across the board with what they're going through, and the development time that they're on is different. There's not much developing in the NHL. There's playing in the NHL. So these kids are in the development program. So I don't think you should back off your coaching details. You just have to be more probably receptive to the journey and the time it's going to take them,
Right. Yeah. Dealing with kids who've come up in the age of social media, I assume you got a lot of players coming in who know you from the YouTube clips, from the TSN Top 10 meltdowns, and then to have a guy who cuts cartoons and leads the charge on all the candy stores raids. Can you talk a bit about
love that. I love that.
the world famous candy?
I love that when they want to go to the candy store on the bus ride on the way home, they all want to go get some candy. I'm just like, that's crazy. But actually, it's funny now. Most of these kids, it's their parents or their uncles or their brothers that have been watching the Break and Stick program. Not so much them, but when they do see it, there's some humor with it. And I think that's probably a good thing. It is a good thing to turn into some humor for sure.
That's hilarious. I love that. Yeah, it's I guess the generation has evolved. Geez, it's almost coming on 15 years now since that since that top 10 moment took place, hey?
Telling some kids the other day about a story. We were talking to the team, and I was talking about, the '04 run and something that we had done in the '04 run, and then we're on the ice, and when the conversation was over, the kids are all skating away, and one kid comes up, he goes, "Yeah, I wasn't even born in '04." I'm like, "Oh my god."
Uh,
Those little stories don't flush out as well anymore.
so Dad, obviously when you played the game, it was a very physical game. There, fighting was a big part of it, the physicality of it. I think the intimidation factor, and then as you evolved into coaching, we mentioned the TSN top 10 stick breaking moments, and I think that this idea of grit and intensity that some of the players might have a preconceived notion of you, and then how you are obviously quite a different player and a different coach. Now we talked about the candy store visits and the laid back approach to the communication with the players. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of those moments? Of going into the candy store, of sort of lowering the stakes, of cutting videotape, and how that can foster a sense of trust and community, not just with the coaches, but with the team itself.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I think wisdom gives you is the ability to read where people are in different times in their journey. And I think whether they're shy and they're new to the situation, I think it's important that leaders reach out to them, that teammates reach out to them, that people bring them in. And I think the key for me now is when I look at a team or I look at people and someone's on the outside, maybe they're shy, maybe they're uncertain, maybe they don't have the courage or the confidence, but they bring something to the table. And I think those are the people that it's really important that everybody reaches out to. I remember when you kids were playing minor hockey, and we would encourage you guys to go have sleepovers or go bring kids to our place for a sleepover, because then you could explore where different people's skill sets were. And I think some kids or maybe they're a great player and they're scoring all the goals, and the boy in the third or fourth line, he doesn't get the accolades of scoring that, but he comes over for a stayover. You go to his house, and he better at you than pool, or he's better at you than video games, or he does. Everybody has their own individual skill set, and I think it's the team's responsibility to help bring everybody's skill sets out. And I think that's what happens with good communication and good trust, and bringing people together. And I think that you walk into an environment and there's people by nature like to kind of stay in the background, and those people sometimes they want to stay back there, and sometimes they just need a little bit of an invite to come back and get back into the group. And I think good people, good teams, good leaders make sure that everybody feels like they're really inclusive in their part, and their voice means something, and their positioning in the group means something. And I would say for me, coming back to junior hockey, where everybody is trying to get to the same place. They come from different backgrounds. Now we got kids from, I mean, it's really neat situations. We have two boys from Russia and one boy from Ukraine on our team this year. And we have a Canadian boy who's raised with Russian speaking parents. So you have these really cool dynamic where you have a country that's in a civil war, and these three boys living and playing together and speaking language, and now they're completely connected. They do everything together. They eat together. They sit on the bus together. They hang together. They go for lunch together, and it's like that's such a cool thing to be able to bring to our society as Ukraine and Russia in a major war, and these four guys are all glued up and hanging together here playing for the Prince George Cougars. And so I think when you recognize those types of things, that people, when they get together, they have a chance to be good to each other, and they can support each other, and they can maybe bring their confidence up. And I think that becomes something that I've learned a lot more about coming back to junior hockey and watching these kids and being around people that have the skill set to ask the questions. How you doing? Well, what's your dreams? What do you want to do? Everybody's got dreams. Everybody's got a passion. Everybody needs support to get to their dreams, and to support their passion. So I would say that to me is one of the neat things that's really important in today's society, whether it's sports or outside of sports. Reach out and help people. It matters.
Yeah, I remember vividly when I made the choice to switch from playing hockey. I was 19. I was playing in Merritt, and I felt this draw to pursue something new. I wanted to go start acting. And speaking with you about it, something you mentioned was whatever you do, don't let the game that has given our family so much become something that you resent. And that stuck with me in such a powerful way. And I think by making the choice to pursue something different, when I did, I was able to leverage all of those lessons, all of those people skills, all of those good memories and skill sets from the game of hockey, apply them directly into the pursuit of an acting career, but then also continue to play beer league hockey, which, really was the foundation for so many of my still most important, most valuable, not just personal friendships, but career opportunities have come out of continuing to play the game in a recreational capacity. And I think, in Canada, hockey and beer league hockey is a huge part of the culture. And for those of you listening, I really encourage you to get involved in that, to play rec league hockey, to play beer league hockey, to create a sense of community and belonging, because those interactions don't stop outside of junior or pro. I think the reasons that kids love to play hockey is the same. They're the same reasons why grown men show up to the rink and participate in those team settings, because I think it really does. It makes a huge impact on your mental health, and feeling like you're a part of a community is important.
I agree, and I think the dressing room is such a special place. You walk in there, and there's between 15 and 23 people, boys, girls, that at the end of the day, that might be the thing you miss the most about playing hockey is the dressing room environment, where it's very humbling. It's very important to have your voice heard and then to listen. And I think that's what makes the part of the dressing room so special about the game, is the ability to sit around either before, during, and after the game and have that camaraderie, that trust, that bond where we're in this thing together. I've done some public speaking. When you go into these companies that want you to speak to them, their whole thing is, we want to run it like a sports team. And I think that anybody that's ever played a sport, the dressing room is such a special place, and it's just a bonding area that I think if people can find something in their life to have that, you're giving something up of yourself, but you're getting much more back from what a sports team gives you. I know you play volleyball with Jen, and I think that gives you something of like, you gotta show up on time, you gotta give your best effort, but you get way more back at the end of the deal. And that's what I think is important with people and coming together, whatever event they're at. Yeah, you gotta give up something, but I think what you get back is much, much more valuable than your time and energy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the volleyball thing was scary because I'd played, hockey my whole life, and coming into something that you're not good at in the beginning, and knowing that you're gonna be, embarrassed by your wife, who was a very good volleyball player and played, semi-pro. But I think, that's sort of roping it back around to the initial question of how can listeners at home implement some of these lessons in their day-to-day life. And I think it's just taking that risk of feeling uncomfortable, because when you do put yourself in a position to be on a sports team, on a rec league team, whether it's volleyball, floor hockey, beer league, rec soccer, whatever it may be, I really, really see in my own life how sport has become such an important part of how I interact with the world. And it doesn't have to be high level competitive sport. It's that exact thing you're talking about. It's that the dynamic of a room, and of these different people who you normally wouldn't spend time with, working towards a common goal of, winning the game, and experiencing challenging moments and losses and victories. I think it's so important that people pursue those things.
And I think it shows up in many different places. We were in Costco not long ago, and I was talking to a guy in Costco. He said, "Yeah, I've been here for 32 years." And then he goes, "That guy over there has been here for 34 years." And they were proud of the fact that they were long-term employees, and they had this group of people that felt like when they went to work, what they did really mattered. And I'm sure they all come from different backgrounds, obviously, but their pride, like you look at that and you're thinking, if people could take pride in what they're doing, and if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life deal, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what kind of sticks out is you can find that in school teachers can find it. I think, it's not just sports teams. I think there's many other venues where you can find that when people come together and, you got to give up something, but you're definitely going to receive more. And I think that's the messaging for people is, you know, it's hard. It's easier to be kind to people now, and I think that's important. Is find a way to help someone through a tough time, and you're also benefiting from it yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We'll probably end up clipping this, but he's had to step out. He's got his own coaching commitments to attend to. One of the things that we cover in this podcast is maintaining relationships over time and distance. And as someone who's played in many different cities and many different leagues, can you talk a bit about how you maintain those relationships? Because it's a very small world, the hockey world, and I think a lot of how you obviously climb the ladder is predicated on those relationships. So, um, are there things that you do on a regular basis to maintain connections and relationships with people who, may live in, different time zones and are far away? You don't see that often.
I think the biggest thing, Dylan, for me now is the ability with the texting. I think it's not there is some phone call conversations, but I think once the season gets started, I know what it feels like to be in the thick of the battle. So a lot of quick texts back and forth with people is probably the most consistent way that I would stay in touch with people. But a lot of friendships that I have don't need a bunch of maintenance. I think it's a really cool world where you come together and you work together, and no team's ever the same group year after year. So people are always moving on and they're moving around, and there's just friends and people all over. And I think when you go into different cities, you connect with people and you say hi to them. You catch up on their world and they catch up on your world. But it's an interesting time. I think we're all blessed. And I remember the switch over from when, if you needed to talk to a player, you'd phone them and you'd have a conversation with a player. And then when texting came in, you could phone a player and his phone would ring and it'd go to voicemail. You'd text him and he'd get back to you right away. So you could see the evolution of how people, players, most, were more comfortable in dealing with the texting programs as opposed to the long conversations and stuff. So there's still a good balance you have to have with it. I just like the fact that you have those friends. Maybe you don't reach out to them every day or every week, but when you do, you can connect really quickly and pick up from where you left off. So I think, the texting on that part has been a really cool addition to our world.
Right. Obviously, Charm is a sponsor of the podcast, and I've been working with them for many years now. I'd love to hear your version of the story of your championship rings, how you got them, how you lost them,
Yeah.
and how they came back into your world.
Well, I was fortunate over my career. We've been a part of 3 championships, and one was in the Memorial Cup in junior in Portland. One was playing in the IHL. We won the Turner Cup, and the third one was coaching in St. John, New Brunswick. We won the Calder Cup. But the first 2 rings, we were on our honeymoon in Florida, and I wasn't wearing them. We left them in a hotel room in the end of in a little travel bag we had, and we got up one morning and we were driving down the road. We were moving on. We left the hotel. We checked out the hotel. We were going someplace else, and Roxanne, my wife, mom, said, where's your ring? And I'm like, I looked, and of course it wasn't there. And so we pulled over and searched and phoned the hotel, and we were probably a couple hours down the road, and I just said, I think maybe, can you check to see if the maids found the ring? And of course they never. So I'd lost them for probably 33 years. And then you guys got together, and on my 60th birthday party, Charmed and you and some designers from Charm, and they got together and they rebuilt the 2 rings. I think one, they found the mold somewhere, somehow. Someone did some deep dive and found the mold of the Memorial Cup ring. And then the Turner Cup ring, and then they got them both rebuilt. And so obviously, my 60th birthday party from the kids and Roxanne was the return of my rings, which is obviously such a cool gift, and obviously with Charm's skill set and your dedication and everyone's kind of commitment to have that come back into my life after, well, I obviously thought they were gone, obviously, right? And so, yeah, to see them, that was awesome. It was like I got them all back again, and yeah, it's I wear them once in a while to the ring, to the games here now, and just having them and having the ability to have them back was special. It was awesome.
It's cool. We talk about staying in contact with people over time and space. Warren Reichel was actually the player who you've stayed in contact with since those days. He was kind enough to send us some very detailed shots of the Turner Cup ring, and then Moira McDonald at Charm was able to track down the original die for the Memorial Cup ring. So, and I think that's a testament to Charm. Absolutely shameless plug here. It's a fantastic Canadian company, and they do some really heartfelt things. I know they reached out to Ty when he was on the Amazing Race podium, and he was asked, what comes next, and his lovely fiance, soon to be wife, said hopefully a ring, and Charm jumped all over that,
Cool.
and was there to connect him with the perfect engagement ring, and yeah, it was great to work with them and build, not just a piece of jewelry, but what it represents, right? The memory. We talk about awards and trophies, and I think when people pursue success, with the idea that once they get this trophy or this accolade, it fills some void. At the end of the day, that's cold metal, right? But what it stands for and what it represents, I think that's the juice. That's if you're pursuing something for the act of pursuing it because you love the process, then those trophies aren't the reward. It's what those trophies represent. I think that's the reward. So it was cool to be able to come full circle with that.
Yeah, for sure. That's very well said. It's very true, because I think at the end of the day, when you look at the ring, it reminds you of the journey, right? Not just holding a trophy or feeling like you'd won something. You're better than somebody else. That wasn't really at the end of the day, that wasn't the most important part. It was the fact you had a group of people that got together, and from trainers to fans to coaches to support people like your wives, girlfriends, whoever was involved. It takes everybody, and to have a win is cool.
Yeah, that was a legend in
Yeah.
the Playfair household, was those two rings. I remember me and Austin and Jackson used to sit around and actually imagine what it would look like. Like, I wonder what the Turner Cup ring must have looked like, and like
That's cool.
I wonder how big the Memorial Cup ring was. What was it then to actually have that thing, in our hands and hold it and to share in that with you. I think it added a whole new element to the lore of the
Cool.
ring. So
Yeah.
that was really exciting. Dad, this has been fantastic, man. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know we've gone a little bit over. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to hop on and chat with Tyler and myself. And let's do it again sometime.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you very
Awesome.
much. Appreciate it.
I personally love my friends. I think a lot of people know that I'm a people person, and I think when it came to our wedding, we thought to ourselves, what is the perfect way to commemorate, our friendship with our groomsmen and bridesmaids? And we thought Charm. And going into Charm and being able to, handpick a gift for our groomsmen and bridesmaids was such a special experience. And as much as it was just a simple gold chain that is so, so beautiful from Charm, I think it's just, for the groomsmen, I know I have a good little mix of groomsmen, and for them, I hope this, simple little gold chain that is beautiful from Charm is a great way to take them back to that day and take them back to, the story and the friendship we have, and the fact that, they were with me that day. And I know for the girls, the bridesmaids got some of the most stunning diamond studs you'll ever see. And I think it was just like a perfect compliment to, how beautiful they looked. And once again, it all goes back to Charm always has something for everyone. And I think that was our favorite part, is going into that shopping experience, looking for something for our groomsmen and bridesmaids it was just a pleasant experience, because walking in, you knew that you're going to be able to walk out with something that your people are going to love. And I think that's that's our favorite part about Charm. The team at Charm has been a part of Love Stories for over 50 years, and we are so grateful that Charm is a part of our love story and our love for our groomsmen and bridesmaids as well.